we are now talking to former Packers, Panthers, and Seahawk guard, Mike Wahle.
Hey, all good, guys. How you guys doing tonight?
We are good, man. I mean, obviously I'm not because
This is not a gas mask, man. You're in good shape.
You know, it looks
fine.
like it looks
I thought
like
it was stylish.
It does. It looks like a do-rag.
Yeah.
So it doesn't look that bad, especially when I practically rubber band it to my head. But I lost the bet, so I'm a man of my word, Mike. So there you go.
Yeah, good man.
Well, I don't know how many bets you made over there with the Packers. We'll get into that in just 1 second. Tell us a little bit about, obviously not playing. You've been out of the NFL for a couple of years. What have you been doing? I've been reading a little bit about you. I checked out your podcast. What have you been doing since you haven't been in the NFL?
Yeah, so I got out. I stopped playing in 2009. I went back in like 2014. Started working as on the other side of the ball as position coach, performance coach, skill development specialist, and now I have a platform I use, Process to Perform. I help players, parents, and coaches kind of reach that next level. We work on 3 tool sets. We work on mindset development, technical mastery, and ownership decisions. And I use those to help these aspiring athletes, even pro level guys at this stage, kind of level up, get to that next contract, get to high school, to college to pro, et cetera. So we have a lot of fun with it. There's the podcast, obviously, and then there's a couple webinar sessions and platforms that we use to help accelerate development.
What is it with these offensive linemen? They retire, they lose all this weight. I mean, you look fabulous. I mean, from what you were as an NFL player, I mean, you lost a lot of weight. What have you been doing?
Listen, yeah, here's what happens, guys. There's 2 things. Well, one, you get tired of sweating walking upstairs. That sucks, right? And the other thing is, all offensive linemen weigh about, let's say we weigh about 300 pounds. Everybody I know went 50 pounds one way or the other, right? You're either down 220, 250, or you're like 360, and you don't want to be at 360. So I chose the lesser of the 2 evils, right? I can't be big and strong anymore. That sucks, but I don't sweat walking upstairs, so. Yeah, you take what you can get.
Oh, I'm telling you, man. I see some of these guys that retire. They got like 6-8 packs, and they're running in these triathlons and stuff like that. It's ridiculous. So, Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about your career with the Packers? Most of your career was with the Packers. You had the opportunity, obviously. I think you played a little bit with Brett Favre. And you played with Aaron Rodgers. What was it like playing for 2 of the greatest quarterbacks of all time?
Yeah, so I didn't get a chance to play with Aaron. I moved on from Green Bay in 2005. Right. I went to Carolina Panthers, took a free agent deal, and then that kind of started everything. There was a bunch of guys. There was mass exodus from Green Bay. Ted Thompson became the general manager and started cleaning house a little bit. Brett he got a little hot under the collar, and then that started his whole isn't he going to retire? I think they drafted Aaron the next year. He was sitting for 3 years, and then he started coming on the scene maybe 2008. I think that's right.
Your company you're running now, you were talking about you teach offensive line play for the most part. It seems like a lot of the game now is moving towards more shifty offensive linemen in comparison to the big mauler types. Do you see that kind of thing into the game now, and how does that differ the way you teach?
Yeah, to answer your question, I don't only work with football players. I work with confrontational sports. Any confrontational sport, I work with those athletes. But to answer your question, you do see that shift. I think about 10 years ago, they started looking at more basketball types. And what it's really done from a perspective of an old head who just likes running the ball and beating people up, it's kind of taken a lot of that natural aggression that some of us had. It's kind of gone away. And so when you see a guy that's like a Quentin Nelson, that's like a Trent Williams, guys that are not only great athletes, but just have that mindset of, hey man, I'm going here to do some serious work. They stand out a little bit more now than maybe they did back then. I think there's a huge opportunity right now in football at the offensive line position to come in, be a technical master, but just be that kind of guy that wants to finish through the whistle, finish through the echo of the whistle, right? And be able to put guys on piles again. Guys like that are a hot commodity, man. They can make a ton of money in this league, be famous, do all the things they want to do, because there's a very large amount of basketball players who just aren't really about that life.
Now, you brought up an interesting thing. Now, obviously, when you win any battle in the trenches, whether you're an offensive or defensive lineman, you have to have a certain mindset of you're just going to go and be the toughest guy in the room. I think that would be pretty fair to say. Is that something you're taught in Pee Wee, or are you just born with it? How do you get that type of mindset of every snap, I'm going to have to punch this guy as hard as I can in the chest and hope to God that he doesn't move me backwards 5 feet?
You know what? Honestly, guys, everything we do in sports is just about trying to find confidence, right? That's all the coaches are trying to get out of those players, just trying to come into the game as confident as possible. And I always talk about confidence and preparation. So I wasn't born to be an offensive lineman necessarily. I didn't grow up that way. I played quarterback in high school. But what happens is you understand what the mechanics of your success look like. You work like absolute hell to get them. You take confidence in the preparation that you put in to get ready, and then those game days, those opportunities kind of demonstrate how much work you've put in and how much joy that brings to you. When you get those opportunities, you just make the most of them. And for a sport and for a position like offensive line, being trying to punch a hole through somebody's chest, trying to finish somebody over the pile, trying to make people quit, right? Like it's me versus you. I want to make you quit. And just that mentality, that just comes with a lot of, hours and hours and hours and hours of work, and just respecting the process, respecting the work you put in.
As everybody knows, we are talking to former Packers, Panthers, and Seahawk guard Mike Wahle. You talk about the offensive line, and it's 5 guys playing on the offensive line. They all have to work together, and really getting the quarterback and protecting the quarterback and putting the quarterback into position to make the right play and the right throw. When you look at some of the quarterbacks these days and some of the offensive linemen these days, is there an offensive lineman that you see in the league right now that reminds you of you when you played the game?
I really like the guys in Cleveland. I think both Batonio and Wahle, I think those guys are just solid. They're guys that weren't necessarily the biggest commodities coming out, but they're extremely well coached. They're very professional. And I think they have a motto, the same motto we have, man. It's like you work hard, you kick ass, and you enjoy doing both. And I love that attitude. I love the way they finish. Master technicians, just solid players. There's a handful of guys in the league that can really play right now. But I would say that the level of play between the elite and then everybody else is pretty steep. When you look at guys like Quentin Nelson, you look at Batonio and those guys, the difference between them and even the middle tier guys, I think, is pretty drastic right now. And again, it's a testament to how hard they work.
So I want to go back to the Packers, and you had a teammate that was just inducted into the Hall of Fame in Leroy Butler. So what was he like as a teammate on and off the field?
Yeah, he was awesome, man. So Leroy, he was the leader of the team. Him and Reggie, leader of the defense, at least when I got there in 1998. They still had an awesome defense. I think I want to say they were ranked in the top 3 in defense that year. I think Reggie had one of his better sack years, and then he went on to retire that year and then eventually ended up in Carolina. But the thing about those guys is they really know how to run a locker room. They weren't just leaders on the field. They were leaders off the field, the way they carried themselves. And the thing I learned from guys like Leroy, guys like Brett, guys like Reggie was, in football, you always think you have to manufacture emotion, right? We think we have to get up and really get hyped up, listen to Pantera, bang our head against the wall, right? We all watch the program, all this crazy stuff they're doing in there because, at base level, it's one of those sports that you're a little bit afraid. People come in afraid. They've been taught that, okay, you might get hurt, you might get embarrassed, you might get physically manhandled by somebody else. So we try to manufacture emotion. And what those guys taught me, Leroy in particular, is, man, if you just work hard, you confident in your preparation, you can go out on Sundays and you don't have to manufacture anything. You can just be good. Like, it's okay to be good. It's okay to just be good. Know you're going to have a good game. Know you're going to dominate your opponent. Love doing what you do. Love working with the people that you're working with and enjoy yourself. And I think that was probably the best lesson that group of leaders taught me.
You brought up your teammates. You've actually played with a couple of characters. When you went to Carolina for your Pro Bowl season, there's Steve Smith there. Jake Delhomme's been known to kind of been, a little bit of a goofster from what I've understood. Is there a guy that stood out as, oh my God, this guy's just on a different realm of crazy? And then there's obviously
Steve.
Brett Favre.
Yeah, Steve's different. Steve's nuts. Like, and I say that, I love that guy. I went to Carolina because they had the top defense that I had seen, that I had played against in the last 2 years. We played them 2 years in a row. They had Chris Jenkins, Mike Rucker, Pep, Dan Morgan, all those guys are stacked, man. And I went there because the other reason was Steve Smith, because you watch that guy play, it's like you can't help but want to play with a dude like that. And he was all kinds of nuts. But he was so methodical in the way that he went about making people feel bad about themselves on the field that I remember we're playing Atlanta. I don't even know if he had a catch at halftime, but I think D'Angelo Hall had like 150 yards in personal foul penalties and holding penalties. And PI. He could just get under your skin. He did it to everybody. He was a little bit of a loose cannon, right? Like his emotions could overflow from time to time, but I don't think I've ever been around a guy who's as competitive as Steve Smith was.
We are talking to former Packers, Panthers, and Seahawk guard Mike Wahle. Mike, we have had a lot of ex-NFL players on the show, and we talk about this because it's really affected the NFL for the last 6-7 years, the CTE situation with the brain trauma, the concussion trauma. We saw that in the Super Bowl with the concussions throughout the playoffs. When you look at all these stories, Roger Goodell, the NFL getting sued for over $100 million, and you look at these players, I don't think these players have been taken care of enough, even with the lawsuit that they have. When you look at all the things that we've heard and all these players, Patrick Willis retiring early, DeBrickashaw Ferguson retiring early, all these great young superstar players, Calvin Johnson retiring early. Are you surprised? And do you like what the NFL is doing moving forward, the way the league has changed?
In terms of safety protocols?
Yes.
Honestly, I think it's I mean, the league's there to make money, right? The league's there to make money for their owners. So everything they're doing is based off that fact, right? So anything they do from a safety perspective is, and we've seen it already. They cut down the amount of contact we can have. They try to eliminate a lot of the penalties that really affect defensive players, right? Which has allowed, honestly, to a poor brand of football has showed up. Like quarterbacks are basically not getting punished for making bad throws because the defenders can't take the heads off their receivers. But everything they do, I mean, if we get down to it, I'm a little bit cynical about it probably, but when you get down to it, they're really just trying to extend the season. They already did it to 17 games. I'm sure they're going to try to do it to 18. And so that whole thing is really a money grab. How much are they really trying to help out those ex-players? You know, there's a reason they're lawsuits, right? Mm-hmm. They're lawsuits because they're not going quietly.
Right.
So when you ask me, you know, am I happy with the job they're doing from that perspective? You know, anything that you can do to elongate somebody's career is probably a good thing, as long as it's not at the expense of the purity of the sport, right, or what that person can do in their own way to kind of make themselves stand out and have the career that they want. And you know, I don't necessarily like all the rule changes that have come about, because I think it takes away from a lot of the kind of the visceral action of the sport that I love, the part of the violence and all of that I really enjoyed. I think taking away headshots and putting in knee shots and ankle shots is not a net win at all. You know, so there's a lot of things going around, but you know, certainly I think using proper form, like tackling with shoulder tackling, the advent of shoulder tackling and making that a thing now, and making that a best practice method, understanding that that's not just a safety thing, that's a performance thing.
Of course.
Like you tackle people to the ground better, when you're able to go shoulder contact. So there's some of these things that have been instituted that are great, I think, but overall, you know, I always kind of look at the NFL as they're really just trying to make as much money as they can for the owners, and we'll leave it at that.